I'm just imagining waking up, opening the window, and be like, oh, I love a little bit of fresh manure in the morning.
Ugh, nothing better than that. And also, one interesting thing that's is in Pennsylvania and you can't really find in New York is just the very, very large Amish population. There are a ton of Amish people living here.
Welcome to English with Lewis. Let's go. Hello, 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 and welcome back to another chit chat, little conversation, teacher interview with me, English with Lewis, and today's guest, Tim. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Lewis. Thank you for inviting me and for having me. It's so wonderful to finally be able to chat with you. And yeah, I've been watching your videos for a while, so it's so great to finally be here and chat with you.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. And should I call you Tim or your English cheerleader?
You can call me Tim. I mean, you can call me your English cheerleader if you want, but Tim is much shorter, so you can call me that if you'd like.
Excellent. So, where did the profile name come from for your English cheerleader?
That's a great question. So I think that the word cheerleader describes me and my personality pretty well, just because I love to be very positive, very optimistic, very cheerful. So that's kind of where it came from. I also kind of tried to be that way as a Spanish and French teacher, which was my first job. Like I kind of tried to, cheer on my students. And so just that is kind of where the name came from, just wanting to be a very cheerful, optimistic person.
Excellent. So, a cheerful person is like a joyful, happy person. You're always in a good mood, always smiling. And you said that in your previous job, which we'll get to, you said you cheered on your students. Some students of mine get a little bit mixed up and confused between the phrasal verb cheer on and cheer up. And
Yep.
what's the difference? What do they mean?
So if you cheer someone up, that means that someone is sad, someone is not happy, they're feeling discouraged, and you say things to them to make them happy. Basically, you say things to encourage them. So that's cheer up, but of course, cheering on is encouraging someone, giving someone support, saying, "You can do it, you've got this." Right. So usually, when you are cheering someone up, they're sad, but that's not necessarily the case with cheering someone on. That's kind of how I understand it.
No, no, beautifully explained. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Perfect.
So, you're an English teacher now, but you mentioned that you were a Spanish and French teacher. Tell me about it. How did that come about?
Yeah, so this could be a very, very long story. I could talk for
We've got
like
all
20,
day.
30 minutes, the whole day about this, but I will definitely try and make it a shorter story for the sake of, this chat. So right out of college, I had just graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish. I studied Spanish in college as my major. And after college, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with that major. I could become a translator, I could become an interpreter, or I could become a teacher, which I think is what most language majors do after college. So basically, what happened was my French professor in college, she sent me a job listing for a position at an all-girl Catholic school. There was an all-girls Catholic school in Philadelphia, and there was a Spanish and French teaching position available at that high school. And that professor of mine, that French professor, actually recommended me for the position.
Okay.
So because she recommended me, I was like, I have to apply. It would be disrespectful to not apply for it. So I applied, and I got it. That was not very expected. I had no idea that I would get a job on my first try, but it just happened. And then, so I worked as a Spanish and French teacher for 2 years at that school in Philadelphia.
Mhm.
until the school unfortunately closed. It actually closed in June of 2021. So I worked there from September of 2019 to June of 2021. And it was an amazing experience, full of highs, lows, ups, downs, but just overall, such a cool experience.
It's so interesting because I also studied languages at university. And like you said, it's really difficult to figure out where to go in life and what path to follow. I chose to go to university. I say university, you say college, and
Mhm.
study languages just because I thought it would open up so many opportunities. And then it'd be fun to study abroad and to connect with different people and cultures. But I never really knew what I wanted to do. It was always in the back of my mind that I could become a teacher, which I was never against that idea. But the idea of becoming a translator, maybe a little bit difficult, being an interpreter, even more difficult. So we have something in common there, but I've never actually taught Spanish or French or Italian or any of the languages that I more or less know. So
Mhm.
for you teaching Spanish and French, what were the main difficulties at that time?
So when it comes to difficulties, I would say I don't know if this is a difficulty that's exclusive to teaching Spanish and French. This is just a general difficulty that all teachers deal with. It's keeping students engaged.
Mhm.
It's making sure that students are paying attention and, not losing that attention and that focus during class. Um, I think that the way I taught Spanish and French was very unique at my school because we actually did not take a traditional grammar approach to teaching languages. We actually did something called storytelling, which I'm sure anyone knows what that means.
Uh-huh.
Storytelling. So we told stories. And like I created stories together with my students. And these stories were usually very bizarre, very funny, because the weirder they were, the more likely they would be to like stick in the minds of the students. So we used storytelling. We used a lot of reading. Like reading was another thing that we did a lot.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was a strategy that I used to teach at that school. And yeah, just keeping the students' attention was never easy. There were a lot of students who did not really care too much about learning a language. It was something that they were forced to do. So that's why it was difficult at some points, but it was also really rewarding at the same time.
And the reason why you decided to focus so much on storytelling, was it because you had learned Spanish and French using this method yourself?
So, no, it was actually something that the head of the foreign language department, my boss, basically,
Mhm.
like during the interview for the position, she said, at this school, this is the way we teach languages. We use stories to teach languages. So that was kind of, I guess, imposed on me. Like I would not have used that method if, if I had had my own, choice. But yeah, she said that that's how we do it here. And so she sent me a curriculum, that centered around storytelling. And the actual method itself or the approach is called comprehensible input,
Mhm.
which I think is quite a popular term in the language learning community. So I used comprehensible input and storytelling as my main teaching strategies in my classes.
Hey, it sounds great, and it sounds a lot better than the way that I used to learn languages when I was at school, because it was more of the traditional approach of having a grammar book and then some vocabulary exercises, and then from time to time you do some listening, some reading, maybe once in a while a little role play. But for me, it was always interesting whenever I started actually speaking, because at the end of the day, people don't ask you, do you read Spanish? They ask you, do you speak Spanish? Which is why, in my own approach to teaching languages and teaching English, I always focus almost entirely on speaking, because I think people have more fun that way. It's more memorable that way. And we need to work on our pronunciation because many people, many Brits and Americans, when you hear them speaking in Spanish, it's like they're speaking in English with their own accent, just using different vocabulary, which
Mhm.
really grates on me sometimes. It gets on my nerves.
Exactly, exactly. It's so difficult, like for Americans to actually reach fluency in a language. Like I know I'm talking about myself as an American, but just, you know, we all take Spanish or French in high school, and after that, like that's really all of the compulsory language education like we need. That's all of the classes we have to take. And then after that, like, we can choose to study more or we can completely drop foreign languages. I chose to study them more, obviously, just because I love Spanish. I find it so interesting. But like, they really don't set you up for success in high school. They don't really give you enough time to practice speaking. They focus more on grammar. And I think that that is how English is taught in a lot of countries around the world as well. So, I don't know if that will ever change. I really hope so. But I think I've just seen how, harmful that can be to, our development and the development of our language abilities. So it's a shame.
And another thing I'd like to touch on a little bit, which is relevant for anyone who's starting work or about to take on a challenge or do something that they think that maybe they're not 100% prepared for, is imposter syndrome. Even as a native English speaker, I sometimes wonder if I'm teaching really, really high level students, like, oh, will I be able to explain this? Or if people are asking me what's the difference between two different words or grammatical structures, it took a while for me to gain enough knowledge and experience to explain, for example, the second conditional versus the third conditional, which you get with experience and practice. But I don't know how I would feel teaching Spanish to English speakers. I think I'd get a lot of imposter syndrome. I'd worry that maybe my Spanish isn't good enough to actually be teaching it. Did you suffer from this feeling at all?
I did. I did, especially with French, like definitely with both languages, but more so with French, because like when I got that job, I had only been learning French for about 4 years. I actually started learning French in college. I had not studied it before college, and it ended up becoming my minor in college. So, the position was teaching French. I couldn't just teach Spanish, I had to teach French as well. So I really struggled with that, in my 2 years of teaching. And there were plenty of moments while I was teaching where I had just like just moments where I just forgot certain words. And, sometimes in English, we call it a brain fart. I had a brain fart while teaching and just forgot some of the most basic words. Like one time I remember like we were talking about colors and just I randomly forgot the color for blue. Like I forgot how to say blue in French. I have no idea why that happened, especially because the word for
It's very
blue in
similar.
bleu, the word it's bleu. That's how you say blue in French. So I have no idea why I forgot that. But yeah, it was tough. And that's why I did not want to continue teaching after my school closed, because I knew that, there was one opportunity that I was told I could have, and that was a French teaching opportunity for higher levels. And I did not really want to teach higher levels of French. I was definitely scared of that. So that's why I said, no more French and Spanish teaching. I'm going to try and do something else.
Uh-huh. And then you start teaching the colors in French. It's like, wait, what was orange again?
Literally, that is
Orange.
literally that is what was happening in my brain. Like when I taught these classes in French, there were just some moments where like I misspelled words and some students actually corrected me. And so that was a very uncomfortable moment. So I definitely did not feel super confident in my French skills. But thankfully, at that school that I taught at for 2 years, I was just teaching more basic levels, like French 1 and French 2. So I didn't have to, know advanced French to be able to teach those classes.
Perfect. And you've already said that you feel a little bit more comfortable speaking Spanish. What type of Spanish do you speak? Because my Spanish nowadays is very Spanish from Spain, and in particular from the south of Spain. But years ago, after visiting Argentina, I started speaking Spanish a little bit like an Argentinian. What variety of Spanish do you speak?
So I would say that I also speak Spain Spanish. And the reason for that is I actually went to Spain in 2018 and I studied abroad there for 3 months. I stayed in a city called Salamanca
Mhm.
in the west of Spain. It's more in the west of the country. And so Spain is actually the only Spanish speaking country that I've been to. I haven't been to any other Spanish speaking countries. And that's one of the reasons why, like, just it's the one country that I have the strongest connection with. And also, I watch a lot of shows and movies and all that from Spain. Like most of the shows that I watch in Spanish are from Spain. And so I just have a stronger connection to the country compared to other countries in the Spanish speaking world.
Okay, interesting. So Salamanca, I've been once, but only to spend the day, and I had breakfast there in a nice little square. It was very, very beautiful, but I don't really know anything about Salamanca apart from that. So, why did you choose Salamanca, and how was your experience there?
So Salamanca was the city that the program my college worked with, like that's where they sent students. So I didn't really have a choice. I mean, I think maybe I had a choice between like two or three cities, but I did not know, what city would be best to go to. So I kind of let them choose, and they just sent me to Salamanca. But I do not regret going to Salamanca because it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I had the best host mother. She was so, so kind, and she really treated me like I was her own son. She, cleaned up after me. She made me delicious meals. And it was very interesting because, like, most study abroad students live in the same living space as their host mothers and fathers, but my host mother rented a separate apartment for her students. So I did not live with her in the actual apartment she was living in. I lived in another one. And she came over every day. She asked us how we were doing. She asked if we needed anything. And during that experience, I also stayed with, someone from Japan. I stayed with someone like three girls from Italy. I stayed with a lot of different people in that apartment. So that was cool. And yeah, just the experience was amazing. I could talk all day about it, but my favorite things were the school I went to, the classes I took were super interesting. Just all of the cool things I saw, like beautiful churches, beautiful gardens. And it was just absolutely life-changing, I would say, because that was actually my first time ever leaving the US. I had never left the US before then. So that
Okay.
was my first time abroad, and it was unforgettable.
I mean, it sounds like you got lucky if the host mum was making you all your food, cleaning up after you, renting you a separate apartment as well. It's like you hit the jackpot.
I absolutely did hit the jackpot for sure.
And
Yeah.
obviously, I love food. Most people love food. She cooked for you. What were the dishes that she cooked that you liked the most?
So actually, when I was in Spain, like she made this one dish for me that I like came to love. It was pesto pasta. It was very, very simple pesto
Typical
pasta.
Spanish, right?
Yeah. So, like, prior to going to Spain, I had never tried pesto before. But when she made this pesto pasta for me, I loved it. I had never tried it before, and it was just amazing, amazing. So, I am a huge, huge fan of pesto pasta. And there's also this one type of like chicken, like frozen chicken that you can get there. It's called San Jacobos. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like it's basically chicken with ham and cheese inside. And those were amazing. Amazing. So San Jacobos, pesto pasta, and of course paella. You know, she made paella for us several times, and that was delicious. And just I love the rice there. Like they add so much saffron to their rice in Spain. I don't know if that's something they do everywhere, but at least my host mother, she added a ton of saffron to the rice, and it was really, really good.
See, after you said pesto pasta as one of the dishes, I was like, uh-oh, pesto pasta, burgers, pizza. And I was like, okay, now you brought it back and started mentioning some Spanish food as well.
Right. It would, yeah. I mean, pesto pasta isn't Spanish, but it was just one of the things she made for us, and it was just amazing.
To die for.
To die for. Exactly.
Wonderful. If something is to die for, it means that it is delicious. It's amazing. It's so tasty. It is
Mhm.
chef's kiss to die
Mhm.
for.
Exactly. And like that's how I would describe most of the food she made for me. So I was very lucky.
Now, returning to the US, and you're from Pennsylvania. What's
I'm actually from
Pennsylvania
New
like?
York.
Okay.
So I was born in New York, but my family moved me to Pennsylvania when I was 3. So I was born on Long Island in New York.
Okay, interesting. And the state, Pennsylvania, is it kind of like New York or is it much more rural? Like, describe it to us because I have no idea.
Yes, so you're actually right. It is a lot more rural than New York. I was born on Long Island, and Long Island is obviously an island. And
It's
a
long.
lot, yeah, it's long, exactly. And a lot of people live on this island. Like it is very, very crowded. So, like, just a big difference is that there's so much more space in Pennsylvania compared to Long Island. There are so many farms. In the morning, like I remember, before school, I used to smell manure, before going to school. And manure is basically the, like, I guess, cow poop, you could say, like, poop made by, animals like the cows. So it's very common to smell that in the morning, just because of all the farms that are around. So yeah, there's much more space, a lot more farms. And yeah, just the layout of the land is totally different. You're not very likely to see big, huge fields on Long Island, but you'll see them everywhere in Pennsylvania.
Okay. I'm just imagining waking up, opening the window, and be like, oh, I love a little bit of fresh manure in the morning.
Ugh, nothing better than that. And also, one interesting thing that's is in Pennsylvania and you can't really find in New York is just the very, very large Amish population. There are a ton of Amish people living here. Like you're familiar with that more or less,
Yeah,
right?
so the Amish people, I've watched a couple of documentaries where basically, at least from my understanding, is that they live by their own means, kind of off the grid. And usually the men have beards and they wear like white shirts and jackets. And it's like going back in time almost to the way that they live without technology, social media, obviously. Am I on the right lines?
Exactly. So Amish people, they belong to a community of people where like modern technology is not really used. So they actually, they live off of the land. They make their living, from their farms. You will find a lot of Amish farmers markets around Pennsylvania where you can buy fresh produce, really delicious baked goods. That is something that is kind of characteristic of Pennsylvania. And another really interesting thing is just their form of transportation, the way they get around, because they actually use something called a horse and buggy to get around, which is basically a horse-drawn carriage. So you will likely see these horse and buggies on the road if you're driving in Pennsylvania, and you'll have to share the road with horses. So that is really interesting. Sometimes you see horse poop on the side of the road, which is kind of gross. But yeah, it's weird.
Pennsylvania, the land of poop.
Literally, that is literally what it is. I was not planning on mentioning poop more than once today, but here we are.
I mean, it just popped up, right?
Exactly. Or it just popped out, as we could say. I don't know. Yeah.
So I'm curious, and I'm sure many people are, to learn a bit more about Amish people and your experience with them. Like, how integrated in the rest of society are they, or are they completely like separate from normal Americans?
So sometimes you do see them at the store. Like sometimes like you might see them at Target just buying, and Target is a store here in America. It's a very, very popular and very, very large store where you can buy lots of different things.
Mhm.
So yeah, you'll see them out shopping at the grocery store, at Target. But you don't really see them a lot of other places. I would say that, they're very private. And, like if you want to see Amish people, go to an Amish farmers market. That's where you'll definitely see them. But yeah, I don't really see them like in many other places.
It's interesting. I think I've watched a documentary with Louis Theroux, who is a British American documentary filmographer. And what he used to do, in particular 10, 15 years ago, was visit, let's say, isolated communities and people who might have some difficult life circumstances to deal with. And then he'd live with them for like a week, 2 weeks, ask them lots of sometimes awkward or uncomfortable questions. But the footage that he got from this was really eye-opening for people who haven't seen, for example, Amish communities, to get a little bit of an understanding of what they're like, how they think, their way of life, lifestyle, and beliefs. The same thing, I think he went to Utah and spent time with lots of Mormons and so on and so forth to get more of an understanding of isolated communities around the world, but in particular in the US. And I'm a big fan. If anyone would like to check out Louis Theroux's documentaries, just, Google it. I'm sure you can find it on Netflix somewhere. And that way you can keep improving your English at the same time. It's a win-win situation.
Exactly. Yeah, I've never heard of those documentaries before, so I might also, watch them as well, just because I'd love to learn more about these people that I'm literally seeing all over, just the county where I'm living. So, yeah, thank you for that.
My pleasure. And just to highlight another British versus American vocabulary difference, we mentioned previously university and college. In the UK, we use university. In the US, they use college much more, because for us in Britain, college is more like when you are 16 to 18 and you've decided to study something which is, generally speaking, more practical and less academic. So many people who finish school when they're 16 might either go to college to study to become, I don't know, a builder, for example, or they would continue and do their A levels before going to university. But that's one. The other one you mentioned was related to Target. You said it's a really big store. In the UK, we just say shop. Of course, sometimes you might see some signs that would say store, but it's one of these terms that comes from American English that little by little in the UK we're starting to adopt, and all of these Americanisms are just seeping their way into British English as well.
Wow. So, like, you guys tend to use the word shop even for like big stores, or?
Yeah. We use shop for lots of things. Of course, you go shopping and then you have little shops, but you could also have big shops as well. It's just a direct equivalent for store and shop.
Wow, I did not know that. Like, I thought that store was a pretty standard word used all over the English speaking world. So I learned something new today.
Every day is a school day, right?
Literally, exactly.
Now, speaking about your own content and videos and teaching, when you started doing this, what was it like? Was it difficult to, again, get over the imposter syndrome and start posting?
So when it came to posting videos, it was something I had never done before. I was totally new to making content. I had never really edited a video before. So I was not really knowledgeable about video editing or really anything relating to content creation. But I think that if you have a goal like that, the most important thing is just start. My goal was to build a social media presence. And so I think, before you start doing something like that, it's common to let all the worries and the fears get to you. But if you just ignore them and say, no, I'm not going to let all of you win. I'm going to just do this and see how it goes. That is really how to overcome those fears and worries. So I just started posting and I did not stop. I just tried to stay consistent with it. And I posted 5 pieces of content every week when I first started. I started in July of 2022. And I remember that I posted my very first piece of content on the 28th of July in 2022. And I just kept posting and posting until, my content was, pushed out by Instagram to more people. So that's how it happened.
And when it comes to preparing and planning all of these videos, where do you get the ideas from?
I get them from everywhere, literally everywhere. It
From
can
all
be
this cow poop and dog poop.
Yes, I won't really teach those things, though. I don't have plans to teach about that. But yes, literally anything. So like commercials on TV, videos I'm watching on YouTube. And also, I like to analyze the language that I use, in my daily life. And one thing I do is I keep a journal. I actually write a list of everything I do each day, just so I can kind of have like just an account of my life. I love to look back at my journal and look at what I did on this day last year. So I love to keep an account of my life, and a journal. And I actually like to read my past journal entries and look at the language I've used in these journal entries, and just I try to pay attention to words or phrases that are interesting and different. And I ask myself, like, why did I say this word and not this word? So that is one thing I also do to try and get some more ideas. It doesn't always work, but just to kind of summarize everything, I just get ideas from really everywhere, all around me.
So you are immersed in, of course, English life. So you're using all of these ways that you might normally hear people speaking or written down, and then spreading it to the rest of the world. Sounds great to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the fact that you make a journal is something that I've always heard that is really good to practice improving your language skills. If you're learning another language, if you start journaling, then of course you're being curious, asking yourself, trying to improve your like productive skills, because it's always very easy, in my opinion, to listen to podcasts, watch series, watch videos that we post, but then actually taking action and then writing things down yourself, it's hard. Like it takes a lot more motivation to do that. Do you also journal in French or Spanish, or did you in the past?
Yes. So in the past, I did used to have a Spanish journal that I wrote in every single day. I think it was in the first half of 2022. I literally wrote in Spanish every single day. And I did not just write like 2 or 3 sentences. I wrote a whole paragraph in the language to talk about what I did that day, just the thoughts that popped into my head that day, just so many different things. And I really noticed an improvement in my ability to communicate in the language after writing in a journal for several months. So that absolutely does give you results. So I would suggest that to anyone. I would suggest that, you just take maybe 15 to 20 minutes and just write like maybe a list of all the things you did that day, or feelings that you had throughout the day. It doesn't need to be a long paragraph like what I wrote. It can just be something quick, because I think most people struggle with time. They don't have enough time to do all the things that they need to do every day. So just make it something quick, make it simple, and just do it every day, and you will absolutely see improvements if you keep doing it.
Fantastic. That is your message. And let us know in the comments as well. Have you ever used journaling or writing a diary in order to improve your English? Because it's something that I think everybody recommends, but if you're anything like me, you never really get round to doing it. You never really have the time or the energy or the motivation. So if you are one of these people who journals, let us know in the comment. Raise your hand. It'd be interesting to find out how long you've been doing it for, and if it actually works for you. I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'd love to know as well. And of course, like, it's a bit strange to write about your life and, the things you do every day in a foreign language. So it's going to feel strange. And, if you're like me, someone who has a very analytical mind when it comes to languages, you're going to wonder if your writing is correct, if it sounds natural, but just don't worry about that stuff. The most important thing is using the language. You have to actually use it. So as long as you're using it to talk about something that matters to you, then you will definitely improve. So that's my advice.
Excellent. Fantastic. Now let's move on from that. And Tim said before I started recording that he loves would you rather questions. So here I have a little bit of a list, and we're going to take it in turns to ask each other some would you rather questions. So Tim, are you ready?
I am ready. I was born ready for this.
You were born ready for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Decisions. Would you rather travel around the world or buy your dream house?
Travel around the world. I do not need to think a lot about that one. A dream house is great, but I think just traveling around the world will give you so many wonderful experiences. And I think that is what a lot of people are after in life. That's what a lot of people want in life, including myself. So I would definitely choose traveling abroad, and because there are so many countries I want to visit. Japan is one. I need to go to Japan at least once in my life. I need to. So yeah, no question, traveling abroad would be my choice.
And starting in Japan, because you must do it.
I must do it. Exactly. It's not a case of I want to do it. I feel like, it would be a good idea. Like, no. It's a necessity for me. I have to.
Okay, please, somebody buy him a ticket.
Right now, please. I need to. I will beg. Yes.
Excellent. All right, Tim, over to you. The ball is in your court. Ask me would you rather question.
So I have one right here. Would you rather be able to speak to animals or hear other people's thoughts?
Okay. I think I've answered this before at some point, but I might actually change my mind because I don't remember what I said previously. But speaking to animals, there are so many pros. I mean, imagine knowing what your dog or cat is thinking. Imagine riding a horse and then be like, oh, all right, mate, just keep going. Let's slow down, speed up. Because I've tried horse riding once and I fell off the horse. So if I could speak to that horse, then it would be much easier and safer too. And knowing other people's thoughts, I think could be dangerous. And you might find out things that you don't actually want to know. Because there's a nice expression in English, which is ignorance is bliss, meaning that basically if you are ignorant to something, you don't know what it is or what people are thinking or saying, then it's actually a source of happiness, a source of bliss. So I think it'd be interesting to have a switch to turn on and off the ability to know what people are thinking. But if you always knew what people were thinking and they might be saying or thinking bad things about you, then it's going to get you down. And then somebody's going to need to cheer you up. So, long story short, I think if I had to choose, I would rather be able to speak to animals because it sounds fun, it's nice, and I don't really see any downsides. There are no disadvantages.
Yep. I would do the same thing, I think. Perhaps it would be interesting to hear other people's thoughts if you do it with strangers. Like, there are some people who really enjoy people watching.
Uh-huh.
It's just, where you're like sitting on a bench in public, just like watching people walk by. And it might be interesting just to, hear what these people are thinking about. But, if we're talking about like your friend or your family member, then perhaps it'd be better to stay ignorant and to not know what they're thinking, because like you said, ignorance definitely is bliss.
For sure. I do, by the way, enjoy people watching. Sometimes there's nothing better. If you're sat down having a drink, sunset, and there's people just walking in front of you, it's just like, oh, I wonder who they are, where they're from, what they like doing. Uh-huh. And you can go on forever.
Exactly. And like that's something you can do for hours. Like you can, lose track of time just like watching people. So yeah, it might be cool to hear their thoughts, but I don't know. I would definitely do what have have chosen. And I would definitely, hear animals or, be able to speak with them and, talk to them. So
Yeah, exactly. It's a solid choice. Now, let's do one more each. Let me pick. Okay. Would you rather, this is a simple, easy one, I think. Would you rather live in a world with no music or no films?
wow. Well, for
Music
me,
doesn't exist anymore, or films don't exist anymore.
it would have to be, I would rather live in a world with no films because music is so incredibly important to me. Like, just music is something that just makes me feel things that nothing else makes me feel, not even movies. So it would absolutely have to be music. Just my music is like sacred for me. I love music, like a lot of people, of course, but just I can't live in a world without music. Music is what I need every single day, just to to feel happy when I'm down, and I need it. So yeah,
And I think
that's
music is more versatile as well. Like there are many different moments when you want to listen to music, whereas with films, like it's either on your sofa or in the cinema. So if we
it.
narrow down those two options, then I think it's a no-brainer to say
Mhm.
that music is more important than films.
Absolutely. Yep. And I don't know if most people would struggle to answer that question. I feel like that's a very easy question and it doesn't require a lot of thought just because, it's music or movies.
Music is the winner.
Music is always the winner for me. Always.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, final one. Ask me one more question.
Okay, so I actually have my own list here because I have made quite a long list of questions, as a teacher myself. Um, so would you rather always have a full phone battery or a full gas tank?
Um, I'm gonna say that my phone is much more important than my car. So I'd much rather always have a full battery, because there's nothing worse when your phone battery is running out and you don't have a charger with you, and you've got hours ahead of you, and you want to be on your phone, whether that's posting videos, watching videos, paying for things as well, or just scrolling up and down kind of randomly on social media. For me, my phone is much more important than my car. Uh, Also, because where I live at the moment in Brussels, I don't have a car. So I'll drive from time to time, but only if I'm back home borrowing my mum's car, or if I'm traveling and I'm renting a car. So, yeah, I think for me, it's easy that I'd rather have a phone that never ran out of battery. And that'd be a really good invention. I don't know if anyone's thought of that before, but if you could have a permanent battery, then so many problems would be solved.
Absolutely. Wow. So I did not know that you lived in Brussels. Like that is really, really cool. So like that means that you don't really use a car too much in your day-to-day life, right?
No,
For
to be honest, since passing my test, I haven't really driven that much on a regular basis. So I passed my test when I was 17. In the UK, you can start driving when you're 17. In the US, it's 16, right?
Yes, I believe it's 16. Mhm.
And then in most other countries, it's 18. But then I went to university. I moved to Liverpool. I didn't need a car there either. And then from there, I moved to Seville. And there, I didn't really need a car either. So I've always been, let's say, living my life knowing that I don't need to drive that often. And I think this is one of the beautiful things of being in a city and in Europe as well, which maybe is a little bit different in the United States, where people are a bit more dependent on their car and you have to drive to more places. I don't mind driving, but I don't love it. So if I can live my life without having to drive all the time, then for me, it's just like removing a source of stress. So let's hope I
Mm.
don't need to.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean for me like I don't have my license actually. I actually just I like to walk places. My goal is to live in a city in the future. I'd love to, be able just to walk everywhere. But yeah, I'm not sure if the age here is 16 or 17, because I don't have my license. I don't know for sure, but I'm definitely in the same boat as you where like I walk everywhere mostly, and I don't really have and the need for a car right now. But yeah, so I would choose that option too with the full phone battery.
And I asked you also about where you got the ideas for videos from. Personally, I get a lot of mine through just walking, because when I'm walking, I tend to think about many things and my mind goes in different directions. So then I've got my phone with me, full battery, of course. And that's where I'll use the notes app and be like, okay, phrasal verbs about blah, 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 or don't say blah, 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 blah. So the combination of phone and walking, it's a winner.
Absolutely. And, I also use my notes app for that as well. I have a very, very long list of video ideas, most of which will never actually, become videos. But, I just, whenever I have an idea, I write it down. Sometimes the ideas are just trash. Sometimes they are really, really good ideas. And so I do that as well.
Wonderful. Well, we'll call it a day there, but you just mentioned another very American word that I would use a different word in British English, and it is trash. So you said the ideas are trash. I would say the ideas are rubbish. So trash, American English, rubbish, British English. And I think that's a great way to end this lovely conversation, chit chat, interview, all about you and life and Spanish. And we've gone on about everything, haven't we?
Yeah, thank you so much again for inviting me and for having me today. It was just so cool to chat with you and actually meet you. Of course over Zoom, but it's still meeting you anyway. So thank you so much, and I had a great time.
Me too. The feeling is mutual. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And let us know also if you're able to buy Tim a flight to Japan. Um, he's
Please,
begging. He's really begging.
I will accept anything. Okay, just anything to go to be able to visit Japan. That's my number one dream. So please.
Awesome. So thank you, Tim. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and see you next time.